Before it was a vampiric sky demon, a racist hoax, or the ironic face of a DC beer festival, the Snallygaster was just essentially a haunted fart. A petty little ghost that crept around at night, ruined your stuff, and made everything smell like rotten cabbage. But like many good American monsters, it didn't stay quaint for long. So how exactly did a ghost story from the old country evolve into a tool of oppression in the post-war American South? And how, for that matter, did it go from essentially being one of Casper the Friendly Ghost's douchebag uncles to a Baroque monstrosity pulled screaming from the devil's butthole? I mean, just look at this f***ing thing. This is the, frankly, unbelievable story of the Maryland Snallygaster. When German immigrants settled the Middletown region of Frederick County, Maryland in the 1730s, they brought their folktales with them, and one of them quickly grew wings. The Schnellgeist, German for quick spirit or fast ghost, was originally an annoying ghoul that liked to screw around with people's stuff, produce foul odors, and disturb passing travelers, not so different from me at an airport. As time went on and the region's cultures mixed in the American melting pot, the name gradually anglicized into the Snallygaster cryptid lovers and more annoying Marylanders like me are familiar with today. And somewhere down the line, this Discord mod of a ghost transformed into an absolute freak show, becoming half bird, half reptile, boasting an enormous 20-foot wingspan, with either a single burning eye or 3 unnerving ones, depending on how drunk the witness was. A metallic beak full of serrated razor-sharp teeth, and octopus-like tentacles. Sometimes it was even described as having horns or other demonic-type signifiers, and it's really not hard to imagine why. Even a flattering portrayal of the Snallygaster looks like something that Hieronymus Bosch painted after binge-drinking Robitussin. The Snally's historical range spanned the mountainous regions of western Maryland, particularly around Middletown Valley and South Mountain. Sightings extended as far south as Rockville, and reports of the creature occasionally surfaced in neighboring states, like Pennsylvania, Virginia, and even Ohio. In its early days, the Snallygaster was said to have attacked livestock, small pets, and sometimes even children. People living in the days of this legend took it seriously. Tradition held that 7-pointed stars, or hex signs, should be painted on barns to ward away the Snallygaster and other malignant spirits. And you can see some of these on older Maryland barns today. For many communities, the Snallygaster was essentially a third parent, a winged hobgoblin used to frighten children into obedience. Tales of the cryptid passed mostly over ales and passed over dinner tables and across fires. It was a quieter time, a simpler time. But little did anyone know, and least of all the Snallygaster, things were going to get real dark, really quick. This new, dark chapter of Snallygaster history began on February 12, 1909, when the Middletown Valley Register, a periodical of note, published a front-page story titled, quote, "I'm sorry." That's not part of the quote, I'm just prefacing with, "I'm sorry. The colored people are in great danger." And the article was basically violent, racist, cryptid fan fiction, like before the internet. The eyewitness, and I am scare quoting super hard, gave a full accounting of what sounds to be a Snallygaster. Enormous wings, a long pointed bill, 4 legs armed with claws like steel hooks, 1 eye in the center of its forehead, and it screeched like a locomotive whistle. It goes on to engage in some imaginative anthropology before speculating that white people taste bad and that the Snallygaster hide is some sort of MacGuffin about racist beads or some shit. People were just brushing their teeth with cocaine in 1909. It was also published the same day the NAACP was founded. Yeah, it's pretty sus. Come on. This racial fear-mongering cast the Snallygaster as a predator specifically targeting Maryland's black community, a disturbing new thread in the monster's story. But wait, there's more. The paper claimed that the Smithsonian wanted it alive, and that the US government wanted it dead. They were actually willing to lend a Gatling gun to this effect. President Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Rider himself, according to rumor, was going to abandon his African safari for a Maryland hunt. All of this was pure fabrication. There's no record of any official pursuit of the creature. And now we know why it happened. In January of 1909, sightings of the Jersey Devil had caused a media frenzy and skyrocketed newspaper sales. So the Valley Register decided to cash in on this by creating its own cryptid. The editor enlisted novelist T.C. Harbaugh to cook up fake sightings, possibly up to a dozen of them.
I do say, old boy, bully, it's time for a good racism, isn't it?
So the hoax spread, with reports of the Snallygaster carrying off a black man and drinking boiling water and doing all sorts of other weird random crap. Some speculated that it was a Confederate soldier's spirit, and the Register kept the hoax going through February and March, essentially shitposting 1909 style. Things boiled over on March 5th, when a Lord of the Rings scale battle took place between three locals, a sheriff's deputy, and the Snallygaster.
The monster seized Ed Brown and was about to fly off with him when Bill Snyder, who dashed up in his automobile, grabbed Brown by the foot, which broke his suspenders, and he dropped to the ground. Ghost-like wings beat the air and fire singed the pipe. Dreadful bristles stuck from the monster's snout, and its hide the color of the downside of a catfish. It looked like a giraffe on roller skates, said Mr. Snyder. Its beak was serrated with great tusks, and between them lay the partially consumed flesh of a man nearly putrid. Its snout resembled a silo, and from the corners of its mouth leaked a fluid like melted brimstone.
It sold papers, that's for sure, but at the expense of the black community. Most of the sources that I've read on this topic make it pretty clear. The Snallygaster hoax functioned as a blunt force folktale, and the goal was simple: to keep them from traveling. If there's a racist squid dragon hunting you in the dark, you're less likely to move freely. And that fear served the ruling class by limiting the loss of black labor to cities in the north. It also helped by suppressing votes that might challenge the establishment, and it kept entire communities anxious and immobile. And on that bummer of a note, so after losing a saloon brawl to the cast of Howdy Doody, the Snallygaster laid low for about 20 years. Somehow, the Snallygaster returned. In the fall of 1932, at the tail end of Prohibition, reports of something monstrous in the Maryland mountains reemerged. Bootleggers are thought to have revived the Snallygaster myth to scare off snooping federal agents. Explosions and metallic noises from moonshine stills? Obviously that's the Snallygaster, you idiot. But then came its tragic end. The Baltimore Sun alleged that the Snallygaster was lured to a remote moonshine still, overcome by corn mash fumes, and drowned in a 2,500-gallon vat of illegal whiskey. And just the cherry on top of this absurd swan song was the fact that federal agents blew up the still and the creature's whiskey-logged remains with dynamite. Still, not all newspapers were willing to give up the ghost so easily. The Montgomery County Sentinel, in particular, kept the legend alive for years. It reported that the creature was active and preying on residents of The Run, which is a black community in Rockville, and insisted that a whole-ass nest of Snallygasters was nearby, coincidentally not far from where I live. In 1933, the Sentinel claimed that the Snallygaster had gone full-blown commie and had fled to South America, supposedly frightened off by FDR's New Deal policies. By 1935, it was back again, this time prompting some in the local black community to craft makeshift armor from scrap irons for protection. Like, obviously I don't like it that people are afraid, but forging armor out of scrap iron to fight a mythical racist squid dragon goes kinda hard. NGL. And my favorite sensational headline was on the claim that Benito Mussolini, Il Duce, had gathered 40 to 50 Snallygasters to deploy against Ethiopians during the Second Italian-Ethiopian War. Thank God that smut was not an industry back in the 1930s. Otherwise, we'd have deforested the entire continent, printing Snallygaster Saddle Club and pulp covers of bare-chested cryptid wranglers. I'm really telling on myself, aren't I? Having milked the Snallygaster for all it's worth, in 1937, the Sentinel declared that the cryptid had quitted these parts, seemingly marking the end of the old line state's Snallygaster fever dream. So what is there to make of a cryptid that's born from German folktale, raised by American racism, and allegedly drowned in illicit moonshine? The Snallygaster's story is a strange cocktail of satire, folk horror, malicious hoax, and racial trauma. Like most monsters and beasties, it reflects the fears, fantasies, and power dynamics of the era that birthed it. It's a shame, really, that the Snallygaster got hijacked by hucksters who used it to stoke fear and sell newspapers. But I'm not super convinced that things would have gone much differently today had we first sighted the Snallygaster in, say, 2016. If anything, we might be more primed now than ever to believe the wildest nonsense with minimal scrutiny. But there is a silver lining in this Snallygaster of a tale. Heading into the new millennium, the Snallygaster was rediscovered on internet forums and across small press weird book series like Weird US, a roadside legend that developed a cult following. Stripped of its racial baggage, what remained was its compelling, unfiltered weirdness. In 2011, Washington, D.C. launched the Snallygaster Beer Festival, completing the creature's transformation from backwoods nightmare horror show to hipster mascot. Craft breweries and tourism boards embraced the beast, rolling out themed brews and spirits in its honor. Because what better way to commemorate Cryptid who drowned in moonshine than with a limited edition single malt? And in 2018, an MMORPG set in Appalachia, called Fallout 76, included this Cryptid as a boss, introducing it to a global audience of gamers. The Snallygaster was reportedly stunned by the racism it encountered, but the resurgence went deeper than just labels and ironic merchandise. In 2023 and 2024, outlets like Atlas Obscura, the Baltimore Banner, and WETA began re-examining the Snallygaster's dark origins, confronting how a goofy-as-hell monster myth was once used to terrify and marginalize. And that brings us to today. The Snallygaster is a creature born of old-world ghosts and American anxiety that somehow survived the centuries to become one of Maryland's and America's weirdest campfire tales. Part cryptid, part newspaper psyop, part mascot, and all Old Bay. History's weird. Maryland is kind of weirder. If this cozy little jaunt through Snallygaster country was worth the time of your life spent watching it, then by all means, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me about your favorite, least racist cryptid. And if we're being real, it's probably going to be the Fresno Nightcrawlers because, come on, they are so pure.